It is just busy. I see my kids with their kids and I say, oh, yeah. It's their turn, but no, it's my turn to do what my mom did.
Doesn't stop.
No. But it's all good. Mario gets home and I'm like, did I take him to practice at 5:30? I have a meeting at 5:30. He goes, okay, where are their shoes? Where's the hat? Where's the bag? And I said, I put them all in the bag. Okay, you're ready to go. My grandson, my shoe doesn't fit, Grandma, please help home. And I said, is it the same size? Yes, they're the same. And I said, well, why isn't your foot going in? I don't know, it hurts. And I told Mario, put a shoe on, I gotta get my own shoes on. And he comes and he goes, come here. And I said, I can't, I'm putting my shoes on. He comes in and it was Velcro ball. On the very tip of inside the shoe. And I'm like, ugh. We started laughing. I was like, oh my goodness, kids.
Okay, well, we're recording, so we'll go ahead and start. We have only a few folks in the room, so it's mostly for recording on the internet. So this will be available on YouTube, on the city's YouTube channel later, if you want to check any of the slides or anything. So I'm going to go through stuff fairly quickly, but the slides will be there on the web later. So we're going to cover two different things. One, fairly quickly, we'll go through how the hotel occupancy tax can be legally used in the categories, how that works. So the hotel occupancy tax is a state law, and the law makes a two-part test to determine whether any given expenditure is legal. And so, of course, all the expenses that our grants support have to follow the law. And so it's a two-part test. Every expense has to, one, directly support the hotel industry in Alpine, and then two, fit in a specific category that the law breaks down. And those categories are there's a few more than this in the law, but these are the primary ones that we get grants for, which are advertising, promotion of the arts, historical restoration and preservation, sporting events, and transportation. Advertising is the big one. It's actually the one that currently Alpine is the only city in the state that is required to spend at least half of the money we bring in every year on advertising. So it's definitely the most important category for that reason, but it's also kind of the primary one in the law as well. The main thing to consider is that for an advertising expense to be eligible, it needs to be outside of our area, which means Presidio and Fort Stockton are the closest places that where those ads can appear. So like you could buy an ad in the Presidio International, but not the Big Bend Center, as an example, and use the hotel tax money to pay for it. Now, Marfa Public Radio is a weird outlier because a big part of their audience is Midland, Odessa. They have an identical broadcast in Midland, Odessa. And so if underwriting through Marfa Public Radio, we can cover not all of it, but a lot of it, because their audience is so much larger in the Permian Basin than it is here. Let's see. Most of the ad money has to go to actually buying the ad. So paying the magazine for the space, or paying Meta for social media ads, or whatever, actually paying for the ad. But 15% of the money that's awarded under advertising can go to production expenses. And that means shooting video, taking photos, doing graphic design, web design, things like that. It's only 15% though. So that's the cap for production. Let's see. So the one requirement on all the ads where it will fit has to recognize the city of Alpine if it's funded through the grant. And so I can provide everybody with the logo. If the logo fits, great. If it's too small an ad, like a web ad, sometimes it's just not going to fit, and that's okay. But I do need to see every ad that runs. Now, don't have to see every single one. If you do like, here's 4 different ads that all have the same stuff in them, but they're slightly different sizes, that's not a big deal. But I need to sign off on the basic idea to make sure. Primarily, it's 2 reasons. One, The city wants to make sure that the ads look good, and so if I can make suggestions to improve the look of the ad, then they'll be happy. But primarily that requirement that the city's acknowledged, I need to check that box and confirm it. Moving on to promotion of the arts, this is our most competitive category. More money gets requested than we have every time. And that's because unlike advertising, which requires us to spend at least 50%, promotion of the arts and also historic preservation, there's a maximum that we're allowed to spend, and that's 15% of what we bring in the year. And that means that, the fund is limited. Primarily, most of the time people ask for this fund for music, for their events. The Comic-Con, we paid the fees for the visiting artists and things like that. This is a real flexible category. Any expense that makes the art happen is allowed. If you need to hire sound people to amplify the musicians, that's an okay expense. The main thing is limited by the amount that you're likely to get awarded, because so many people ask for it, you rarely get everything that you want if you get successfully funded. Then there's historical restoration and preservation. This is one of the few categories where money can actually be spent in town. Now the arts, we're paying them art to happen in town, but in this case, we could actually improve a local building or something. People often want to use hotel occupancy tax money to, well, can we fix the sewers? Can we make better streets? Isn't that good for tourists? It doesn't count. It doesn't work as far as the law is concerned. But this category, if it's historical restoration preservation and it's of direct interest to tourists, a really significant structure that brings people to town, this category could pay for that. And we have helped to do some restorations to Coconut Field as an historic structure under this category. It also has a max of 15%. Then we have sporting events, and this is also real flexible. The Alpine Cowboys usually get a portion, and the Sul Ross Rodeo also gets some. The requirement is that the sporting event must have a significant tourism interest, like a strong percentage of the visitors need to be from out of town for it to be legal. But other than that, pretty much anything related to the sport can apply. Lastly, transportation, and this one, it's intended for shuttles for attendees to events. And the one strict requirement is that one end of the route has to be at a hotel. Because the idea is that they passed this for, say, there was a convention center and they were bringing convention attendees from the hotel to the convention center, something like that was the purpose for it. There's some flexibility. We can get creative with it, as long as there's a hotel at the beginning or the end of the route, then that ties it to tourism and that makes it okay. The other thing that everyone needs to keep in mind is that the city's on a fiscal year, which is October 1st through September 30th. And the funding period we're taking applications for now is October 1st, 2025 through September 30th, 2026. And that means not only is that when the money's available, there's no money available to October 1, but the way that the auditor likes to see things, there is a brick wall either of those dates and nothing passes through it. And so you can't have an expense in September and then us pay for it in the next fiscal year. So all the actual billing dates, they have to occur within that window as well. Now, they can extend past it, like say there's a purchase of something that where a bulk of the service is provided in October, but they start in late September. That's okay. There's some flexibility there, but all the paperwork has to be clearly within the fiscal year. And then I'm going to go over some of the issues with the application. For starters, the deadline, it's Thursday, April 17th. That's the day before Good Friday, which is why it's on a Friday. Usually it is. And the key part of this is the application has to be received by City Secretary Gio Calderon by 5 p.m. And so in the past, somebody has sent an email right at 5. Gio had already gone home for the day. So he has to like have it, see it, acknowledge it by 5. So if you're emailing your application, which is fine, you can get Gio's email address on the webpage, they'll show in a minute. But just make sure that, I would suggest if you're gonna email it, and especially if you're on the last day, email it no later than 4 and then call City Hall and make sure that Gio got it. You know, because that way you know that it got here. The main reason people have not been funded in the past, primary reason, is they did not include all of the required attachments, which has confused a lot of people. The application is a form that you fill out, but then there's a list of other things that you have to create yourself. And here's a list of them. The first 5 are the ones that absolutely have to be there. And if any of them is missing, we're not allowed to even show the application to the committee. It just doesn't get past the first hurdle and it cannot be funded. And I'll go through all these individually, but surveys and tabulations, that is kind of a holdover from the way we used to do things, asking people to confirm their visitation. If you have those, that's an attachment. And then if you close the street or something, if you have a permit, then the application would be a required attachment. Those are the gray ones. Those are only if. So here we go. The application needs to have a budget. It doesn't have to be super itemized, but it does need to give the committee an idea of the size of your event, where your revenue is coming from. And this is actually really important for the criteria that they use to not to score and consider each of those applications. Because if there's more requests than we have money, then the committee is going to say, well, how much of your request are they going to award? And if you show that all of your funds are coming from a hotel occupancy tax grant, 100% of your budget, that's going to be a mark against you. You probably won't get fully funded if you get an award. But if you show, oh, here's other places that we're getting money, the smaller a percentage of your total budget that is represented by that grant that you're asking for, the more the committee's gonna like it. And you're likely to get more of what you're asking for. So there's the budget, then a marketing plan. Again, this doesn't have to be every single detail, but the committee wants to see that you know how to promote your event. And they want to see you show them how you're gonna do it. So that means, are you gonna do a TV ads? Are you gonna do social media ads? Are you gonna do newspaper, magazines, direct mail? Any of these things are fine, but they want to know that you've thought about it and that you've done a little of that legwork to figure out how much money you're gonna need for each of those promotional channels that you're gonna use to promote your event. And so you absolutely must have some form of marketing plan attached to the application. Then a schedule. I didn't have any bullets under this. It's kind of obvious. If any detail about what's going to happen during the event, presuming it is an event. If it's not an event, then it could be a project, and you'd have an estimated schedule where this is when we're going to begin the project and this is where we're going to end. Art Walk generally has a full schedule, not just of the events on the day, but they'll have, this is when we're going to start placing our ads. This is when, and so whatever is going to help the committee to know what you're going to be doing and what's happening would fall under that. And then this one can be tricky. It's the estimated attendance and economic impact, estimated economic impact of your event. Now, if it's a first-time event, you don't know, and it's okay to guess. We encourage it. You're going to do your best guess as to what you think based on your promotions, how much advertising you're getting out there, the audience that you know about that you're trying to reach, how many of them you think might come. That's absolutely fine. They are also going to want to see hotel activity. And so a really good idea that I know the Comic-Con did this last year is to work out a promotional discount with one of our hotels, work out a partner hotel. And then that's something that can verify too after the fact. How many people use the discount? It also helps you with your advertising, helps get people's attention. Let's see. Then we have an event report. That's, if it's a first time event, then you're gonna put a piece of paper that says event report. This is our first event, and so we don't have a previous event to report on, you know, it's that simple. But if you have had a previous event, and 100%, if you've had a previous event that has been funded, it was always a requirement to make a report and send it to me. And the one change to the application guidelines this year is that your previous year's report is now part of the application. So you're gonna attach it to the application with all these other things. And that the reason is that way it automatically goes to the committee and they get to see your report. And so what we're looking for here, it's similar when we did that attendance and economic impact that you're guessing for the coming year. This would be looking back. So you're trying to give whatever numbers you can come up with for what happened, how did it go? And so highly recommend, as you're planning your event, coming up with a way to count people. And ideally a way, this is something that I was helping to run the wildlife weekend this year. And we counted people and did a great job. Realized we didn't do such a good job of identifying where they were from. And so one thing that we're thinking about for next year that I would recommend, if there's a door, have the person, if you have a door with a ticket sale or something, have that person ask for a zip code when they take the money. And then you just keep a running tally, and then you may not get everybody, but you'll have a sample. And we can say, what's the percentage of the zip codes that were local versus not local that we captured? And that gives you a good percentage, because then you had a count of your attendance, and then you got at least a sample of zip codes, so you can estimate how many people came from out of town. If you aren't taking tickets, like everything at the wildlife weekend was free, we're gonna just try and identify a volunteer and have them at the door with a clipboard, just talking to as many people as they come in, say, hey, would you mind telling us your zip code? It doesn't have to be onerous at all. Now, if you can collect an email as part of your operations, that's just gonna help you, because email marketing is really, really effective and not expensive compared to a lot of other marketing. So I just recommend that. It's not something you have to share with the city, but if as you're sharing that, you're more than welcome to invite your audience to sign up, to be added to the Alpine newsletter list. We send out an email once a month. Let's see. So you're going to want to give whatever numbers you can in that report about attendance. You're going to include a budget. So the budget for your application is proposed. It's what you think is going to happen for the coming year. And what we want to see in the report is, well, what actually happened. Again, it doesn't have to be every single line item, but give us that overall idea of what money actually came in from where and what money kind of went out in general categories. And if they want to see that, the committee also specifically asked for photos. So they want some evidence that it actually happened. Photos or didn't happen. And then I would love to see an outline. You did that again, proposed marketing plan. I would love to see some analysis of the promotions, because I'm in charge of promoting the city of Alpine. I'd like to know what worked for y'all. And I often will consult with new events and make suggestions. So if I can learn from all the events that are currently doing things, what promotions went well for them, I can share that information. So I would love to see what promotions worked and what didn't. If there's any notes on things you would change, that's great for the report. But you do need to have that report as part of the application. And then lastly, I'm going to go real quickly over when the committee receives all the applications. So we have it's a city board that's appointed by council. There are, I believe, 7 seats. There's a council member and myself are ex officio. So I run the meetings, but I don't have a vote. And our council member, Rick Stevens, he is present, but and is part of the discussion, but he also doesn't have a vote. So it's representative citizens of the city that are reviewing the applications. And And this is how they score them. The first meeting we have is we score all the applications based on these criteria. So we have impact on overnight hotel stays. I've got that highlighted. We put the most weight on it because that's the one the law requires. It's the most important one. And then professionalism and a sound business and promotional plan. You want to give the committee the feeling when they read your application that you know what you're doing and you're gonna do a good job. So you can convince them that it looks like a professional package. Secondly, they need to be confident about your capacity to host a successful event. Now, for most of the applications that come in, these are events that have happened in the past and the committee knows. So they have confidence in the applicant because they've been doing it. They can see the report. They know you have the capacity. But if you're a new program, then you're gonna need to, everything about your application is gonna need to give them confidence, and because they're gonna be scoring based on that. But then we have diversity of revenues, which is what I was talking about. That percentage, one of the questions in the application is what percentage of your total revenue is represented by the hotel tax? And the lower that number, the higher the committee's gonna score you. They would love to see 25% or even less. A lot of them, folks whine in the 75%, but I see some frowns from the committee, and sometimes they'll score against people when it's that 75% or higher. At 100%, they're scowls, you know, they don't want to see that. So that's where that proposed budget, where you're looking at what are all your potential sources of support and revenue for the event that you can stack up with that grant amount you're asking for, will help. And then we check off, this is kind of a leftover receipt of final report from previous years. But we know we've got it because it's required in the application. The other last two things are kind of similar. They are meant to encourage new events and innovative programs. So if it's something new, now innovation can happen even in an event that's happened for a long time. So you can, these are not a ton of points related to those, because as I said, we score them all with the impact on hotel stays at the very top. But you can get a few extra points trying something new and kind of saying, hey, we're mixing it up. We're trying something new. Those are the criteria they're going to score all the applications based on, and it really does affect whether an application gets funded. It's very rare that the committee just says no, because they do like to encourage people to do cool activities in town. But it makes a huge impact on how much of your request gets funded. So some folks might ask for a lot, but if committee doesn't have confidence in their application, they'll say, oh, well, we'll try you here and see what you're gonna do. And then lastly, where is the application? It's on the city's website, cityofalpine.com. You go to the menu, how do I, the sub-menu, apply for, and go to the hotel occupancy tax grants page. And that's gonna give you downloads of the guideline and application and schedule. It's all in one PDF file. And it will also, all that also will give you Geo's email address, phone number. You can bring your application on paper in person to City Hall, or you can email it to Geo, you can mail it. However, as long as he gets it by 5 p.m. on April 17th. And then, is that fast? Any questions that anybody has? Let's see if there's anybody online. No, they aren't. But they didn't put the Zoom till later.
I actually have a question
Yes,
on
please.
like when we're adding like cost of things, like our time. How do we add that in? Do we add that in there as well, or do we leave it out, or?
That is a good question. I think what you might do is include in your budget in-kind portion, and then you could put your contribution of time as an in-kind, and then yeah, and it wouldn't be an expense. It would just be in.
No, yeah, that way,
Yeah.
yeah, like it's almost like how much we're spending, like
Yeah,
it's part of it, but not really because it's our time.
yeah, and
But
it's,
I was just wondering if we add that on there so they know like how much time we got into it and stuff like that.
yeah, it's not, it's rare that folks will do that. Now, it's also possible, within some of, so administration can be, like administration of advertising can be, within the production cost.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing, but mostly, yeah, it wouldn't hurt anything to let people know, but it wouldn't be $1.
Yeah, no,
You know?
it's not to like receive money, it's just like, I guess, cause it would be like a cost, you know, like
Yeah.
how they're wanting to know, like the percentage, they want it to be. They're not using all that money, but is our time considered like? an
I would say
expense?
that your time would be difficult, to monetize that way, because every event has, volunteers doing that, and so that's tricky, unless you actually had a business doing that thing
Okay.
that you then had or, here's my rate sheet, that's
Yeah.
all, you had all that apples and apples to say, well, when we do this for this client, it costs this much, so therefore we have a paper trail to say this in-kind donation is this much. When like say a hotel donates rooms, that absolutely is an in-kind donation that has a specific, that dollar amount, really easy.
Okay.
And, but I don't think it's a bad idea to, and you could put it like on the budget, but I would write it as in-kind volunteers, something
Yeah.
like that. And indicating also the, like, volunteer activity is another sign of like community
Yeah.
engagement, things like that, so that's not. Yes,
So if you're bringing in an artist, right? Does the city send them the funds?
there's two ways that we can do things. And the way that generally the city likes to do things is the organization that's running the event pays the expenses, keeps all the paperwork, and the city reimburses based on that paperwork. But in a lot of cases, we do pay directly, but then we need complete paperwork. In terms of say musicians, a lot of times they need to be paid up front. They need to be paid in cash on the day of the performance and things like that. And we understand that. And so what we need in that case is like a copy of the contract stipulating those terms. And then if the artist needs to be paid directly, then, and the city only cuts a check. That's all the city's ever gonna do. And so this, and every check that the city cuts has to have a W-9 on file in the finance department. So if the artist needs to get a deposit check, we would have the contract showing the agreement between the event and the artist. We would have an invoice from the artist for that deposit. We have their W-9. And as it comes along, you can always ask me this stuff and I'll walk you through exactly what you need for anything. But you'd have those things, and then you get that to me. I request a check, it gets mailed off. Let's say they're a touring musician and they're in Galveston. It gets mailed to them in Galveston. Now for the night, if most of the time, the way we do that is we make sure is the city's check paying process with the municipal government. Nothing happens fast, right? So at the start of each week, there's a batch of check requests. And at the end of that week, there's a batch of checks that the city cuts and has signed. And so if I get my paperwork to the finance people by Monday, then I have a pretty good shot, it's not 100%, but a pretty good shot that on Friday, there's gonna be a check. And so, let's say your event's gonna be on a Saturday, well, best to get 2 Mondays before, get that request in to pay that artist on that Saturday, so that the Friday before, you got an extra Friday just in case, it didn't make it in. And then you have a check to hand them on the day when they're doing the performance. If they 100% require cash, then that's a different kind of paper trail where generally we have to pay write the check to somebody else, like usually within the organization. We'll write the check to the organization and then you guys cash it. But we need that paper trail that shows that it, usually it's a signed receipt, that it went to them, you know, that sort of thing. That's trickier. In general, if you tell folks, this is a city government and they only pay by check, they're gonna might grumble, but they'll be okay. It's not, because it's not like taking a check from just a person. You know, they usually can trust that it's gonna clear. That was a long answer, sorry. Alright. Right, and so given that, let's just say, so for the YouTube video, my name is Chris Ruggia. I'm the Director of Tourism for the City of Alpine, and my email address is Chris, CHRIS, @visitalpinetx.com. That's visit, VISIT, Alpine, ALPINETX.com. Any questions about applications? Just let me know, send me an email, I'll happily answer them. And once the grants are awarded, I do this with basically every expenditure. I have to ensure that all the paperwork's there, so I'll answer any questions about that stuff. So anything?
And when we submit them, it was like 1 through 8, right, the requirements?
There's 5 strictly required and 2 that are like if it applies.
Yeah, and so does each one, we have to have one on one page, number?
The
number
pages
one,
don't matter, that's up to you. The
Okay.
main thing is that as we're skimming through, so if, let's say, the schedule of events is short and you only use a third of the page, there's no reason you can't then have just make sure there's at least a heading
Better,
that's labeled each of those things with something, you know, that applies underneath it.
Yeah.
And that way you're gonna get to the committee. Now, the
Right.
committee may look and go, we're not very happy with what you put in there, we're not gonna give you as much money, but at least you got to by
Right.
having something under that heading.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's important for the first. term. And as formal as you want to get, like one committee member, they wanted to ding people on professionalism if they wrote out their application by hand. I really advocated against that because I think, you know, you can be professional and still use a pen, that's okay. But making sure everything looks nice and neat and clean and clear, that professionalism thing absolutely is something that committee looks at. And so if you feel, as you're putting the thing together, that it looks better and it looks more professional by having like table of contents and page numbers and everything's on its own, do it. You know, it's really just beat that, make sure it just looks professional, sound business plan, like you know what you're doing, and gives them confidence that you're gonna follow through. Any other questions at all? All right,
Maybe later.
okay. Yeah.
This
got the email.
this is the
address.
first
Got the
time, but
email.
we
All
can
right,
get in
thanks,
there,
Will.
yeah,
You bet.
yeah.
Okay, well then I'm gonna end the meeting and try and find the recording.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah,
Thank you guys.
sorry, I got a hard out.
Yeah.